Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the iHeartRadio network, the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America. Thank you so much for following Big C Sports. Also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. You good old boys up in Canada. I've had such a loud response, Big C. A lot of people have been asking me, can I do that 3 seconds of the national anthem? So here it goes. Whoa, Canada. Oh, man, I choked, Big C. I can't stand performing under pressure. I feel like one of the good old boys at ESPN when the teleprompter goes out, Big C. But I do want to say there's no one I love more than you good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave, Big C. How's it going for all you good old boys?
We're getting ready for some hockey down here. You know, we got the Predators going to be in the Western. I get a hard time, figuring that out, being the Western.
Did you say Donald Trump is going to be in the NHL? Is that what you said, Big C? Go right ahead, sir. Okay, just making sure. But, a lot of good things happening in the NHL and, basketball. Everybody's talking about basketball. In Houston, we have a problem with James Harden, not being the leader of that team that they actually pay him. They pay him money to be the leader, Big C. But I think the worst thing that happened was a lot of people saw that Jay Cutler got a job with network television for sleeping during the game, and everybody's trying to get the broadcast. So all he's doing is auditioning, and don't blame James Harden. But I also want to say, baseball's going strong here in the Bay Area. Last night, watching the Reds come in town and beat the San Francisco Giants. A lot of good things happening in the world of sports, Big C. But as we get right into it, I just want to ask you your thoughts. When we watched, at least when I was a little boy watching the NASA program down in Houston, they would always lift off from Florida, but Cape Canaveral's in Florida, but Houston's the headquarters. They would say, Houston, we have a problem. Big C, what happened with Harden last night? Is he hurt, or did he just not care last night? Your thoughts?
Well, it was almost like the Alexander Ovechkin theory. You do so great during the regular season, you're an MVP candidate, and come the playoffs, for some reason, you just don't have it. When you're not used to going to the finals, and you don't know how to get there. And so much pressure is put on the team. But when you look at the top three MVP candidates, Charlton, during the regular season, and I think as far as it is being still going to go on and have this program once everything is over with the finals, announcing the regular season MVP and none of them are playing, in the playoffs. James Harden, went the same way that Russell Westbrook went.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
You had this hot regular season and you flamed out in the playoffs. But, you think about Harden not getting off a shot until the second quarter.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's hurt or you just didn't care.
Yeah.
And I have to look at the latter, but you just didn't care, Charlton, because even the third runner-up, as they talk about for the MVP, Kawhi Leonard, didn't play.
Yeah, he didn't even play.
You got to toss him out of the MVP equation because the Spurs have basically won a game and a half without him.
Yeah.
So, how can he be the MVP?
Yeah.
But, James Harden only scoring 10 points and Houston losing by 39. I mean, when they were down by 8 in the game, it's like, here it is, game 6. And you're down by 8 at home, and it doesn't seem like you're interested.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, they're down by 20, Charlton. And it's like, okay, they don't care.
Yeah, that's...
And then, to lose by 39 in the end, that's almost like an embarrassment to the NBA. And you wonder, is the NBA also orchestrating things, Charlton, because you want the 1 and 2 seeds playing each other in the Western Final?
Big C, good point.
Now Tom hasn't beat Golden State in a Western Final, but, anything can happen. We know that Steve Kerr is out. But, it was just a strange scenario, Charlton, when you sit there. And I haven't seen a Western semifinal or even an Eastern semifinal game play that bad, Charles, in 25 to 30 years.
Yeah, and in fact, when you bring that up, that's a very good point. I do want to say that today's segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Michael Wilbon, he's going to be down in Washington waiting for that game to get started, to tip off. with the Celtics coming in town to play Washington. But I just want to go back and throw a little bit of Hollywood. You know, we're out here in Hollywood, Big C, and we always try to look at that angle. And I know you like them good old girls from California, even though you don't fess up when you go back south. Big C, all those girls that get their fingernails done and their hair done, but they say, don't touch me. I mean, what kind of girlfriend is that? And it gets all good looking and say, don't touch me, Big C. But that's how it is out here in California. Something flippant that some good old boy told me, and I'm just thinking it's just a sideshow, okay? But if I look at the people who are involved with the Kardashian girls, those Hollywood girls that have so much drama in Los Angeles, I'm just going to run down a couple of names, and you just tell me what you think. There's a brother named RJ, when his career was on top. I don't know where he is now. Reggie Bush.
His career was never on top. His sister's career was on top. Brandy, everybody remember her as the young singer and stuff. She had a television show called Moesha.
Yeah.
But, you know, he was living off of her coattail. And, you know, I guess the tail of Kim Kardashian.
Well, now I finally get it. I'm a little bit slow, Big C, but you know, all spirit, love, and war. And he was so good in his performance, even the great Hulk Hogan decided to do part 2, and he got $125 million. So, and then I run down another name. I might get into that industry, Big C. No one says they do it, but everybody gets rich from it. A guy by the name of Reggie Bush, Heisman Trophy winner out of Southern California, didn't have the same kind of success in the NFL, but he also dated Kardashian. And what happened with the great USC program based on the guy that dated Kim Kardashian, Big C? I think it's called probation. Is that what happened to them?
Well, he got on a little bit of probation, but he also lost his legs, you know, after Kim Kardashian. He had no legs left.
Wait, they tell athletes, especially boxers, don't do a certain activity before you get into the ring because you need your leg strength, especially when you run a 40 and 4.3 and you got to outrun linemen that weigh 300 pounds, Big C, okay? So some of his legs were left behind in Los Angeles. There's another good old boy by the name of Lamar Odom. You know, he dated one of the Kardashian girls. This is just something the barbershop guys, you know, you go to the black barbershop, you learn more than you learn on SportsCenter. Some of them brothers at the barbershop were telling me, what happened to Lamar Odom? He also dated a Kardashian. Big C, any thoughts of what happened to Odom? Yeah, I'm telling you, everybody on your bucket list, go to a black barbershop when they're talking about sports. You get some of the real talk. It's a lot like Big C Sports. In fact, they love our show, but it's a lot of real talk. Last guy I'll bring up, who also dated a Kardashian, he was missing in last night, Game 5, Houston and San Antonio, Lamar Odom. Not Lamar Odom, but James Harden. Harden just kind of disappeared. He also has ties to the Kardashian clan, Big C. Any thoughts about what that means?
Well, you know, he was there with Roy after Lamar. We saw what Lamar ended up in a brothel.
Yeah.
It seemed like after last night, that he's going to win where Harden just came from.
Big C, if you go to the black barbershops, you learn so much refreshing news. I mean, they get on POTUS, on Donald Trump. They're even taking bets on how long Donald Trump's going to last because he tried to fire the guy that led the investigation of him in Russia. But what he doesn't realize, he even threatened the guy that said, you better hope there's no audio tapes. That's called a threat to the FBI. That good old boy is drinking on too much moonshine. Big C, your thoughts?
I don't know if Donald's on moonshine. I think he's just shining himself. You know? Donald has mental problems.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
For a man to sit up and lie at the rate that he does, I mean, he's not telling opposite stories to him. He's just flat out lying.
Yeah.
Because between he and his staff, his immediate staff that he has open communication with, they've got to the point right now they can't figure out his lies. They're telling one lie, you tell them.
Yeah.
And so, but you know, this is the man who is leading our country, and then the people that are answering for him saying, what difference does it make?
Yeah.
If the former late President Richard Nixon was around, you'd have to ask him that question.
Yeah, that's true. That's so funny. And the funny part is everybody knows. They say we touch on the race thing because everybody does. We just call it more blatantly. If President Obama was threatening the leader of the FBI while he was president, all of them good old boys would have been holding press conference after press conference let alone do they say we want to make sure that he fails, and they want to make him a one-term president. And even when he had a speech one time in front of the Democrats and Republicans, some knucklehead said, "You lie." We haven't heard any of that garbage since Donald Trump's been in office, but all he does is lie. And he said the FBI is not investigating him. But when they say they're investigating the White House, who does he think him is, Big Z? Your thoughts?
Like you said, we just don't know. Can you believe I'm the president? He doesn't even believe it.
That's funny.
He's still at Neverland. Okay?
Yeah.
This is almost like Willie walked in the chocolate factory.
That's funny.
I love his actions every day. He's constantly talking about make America great, make America strong, bring back jobs. He spends more time signing executive orders, Charles, than he does. They're telling lies.
Yeah.
They're running neck and neck if it was the Kentucky Derby. And we know almost, I guess that horse almost dreaming.
always dreaming. Yeah.
That's Donald Trump, because he's dreaming that these executive orders are going to change America.
That's funny.
Put some pen to paper to create a job.
Yeah.
As we spoke about, last week and early this week,
Yeah.
Donald Trump has fired over 4,000 Americans since he became president, okay?
Yeah.
Over 4,000. I ask any of those people that voted for him, said give him time, show the 4,000 jobs that he's created elsewhere to offset those 4,000 government jobs that he fired people from, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Those are jobs that were critical in the economy and in the safety and sanctuary of America.
Yeah.
But he felt a need to fire these people because he needed control and he couldn't watch that many people. So if he fired and keep a skeleton staff, maybe he can watch what people are doing.
Well, that
the lies that they're telling us sneaking out on him.
Yeah, no, you're right, Big C. The good old boys, the only people that remind me of you, there's a good old boy back in the day. His name was Robin Harris. He was a great comedian that passed on in his prime, and he was a lot like Richard Pryor. Maybe no one was as funny as Richard Pryor, Big C, but Robin Harris was such a great comedian. Really loved him. There's another brother out there named Paul Mooney, who's so gripping with the truth. He just tells the truth like it is, and a lot of people love him, but they won't put him on network TV unless it's on a late night talk show, Big C, because it's just honest. And I found some brothers over here in the Bay Area that do a good job of doing hair. But you also can turn off ESPN when they're on because they got an opinion about everything, Big C. And a lot of times I got to say these brothers are right, even though they can't get a job in network television. Want to get your thoughts about tonight's game, Washington and Boston. The NBA, even though some people say, well, the NBA playoffs are not that exciting. Big C, they set an NBA attendance record this year with over 22 million people. It's at an all-time high. It's as hot as ever, Big C. Your thoughts on the NBA?
Well, Charlton, the NBA is, just an outstanding game. When you look at the athleticism of the league these days, Charlton, and the players, there's so much parity in the NBA. That's the thing you look at. Especially, you look at the Eastern Conference, and you look at the last three teams playing in the Eastern Conference, Charlton. They were all within 8 games of each other.
Yeah.
That's parity. And Boston won the division, so playing Cleveland where everybody figured that Cleveland would run away with it.
Yeah.
But, Boston, other than the racism that's constantly spewed in that city from the fans, that has an excellent organization. Danny Ainge has put that team together.
Oh, yeah.
And by Isaiah Thomas, everybody says he's too diminutive to be a dominant player, but, ironically, he keeps going out and getting 30 points every game. I can't figure it out. I'm not like the experts out there that say, he can't lead and you need another guy to be the lead guy on the team. For some reason, he has his team up 3-2 in this series, Charlton. Although the home team has won all the games in the series, Charlton, Boston needs to go into Washington tonight and close it out. They cannot take this game back to Boston because if they do, I feel that Washington would have an advantage. They've gotten better and better as the playoffs go on, and if you think about it, Washington has had a chance to win all 5 games, Charlton. They've let them slip away. I can't see them doing that in a 7-game series. So Boston, it's imperative that they close it out tonight. If not, Washington will win this series back in Boston.
Big C, that's a very good point. You look at what you just said about the great Isaiah Thomas, And the only thing missing with him is the voice of Johnny Most. Johnny Most, Isaiah Thomas with the 3. The Celtics win. I love that voice, even though I can't say it the way he said it, Big C. A lot of them good old boys in Boston, they understand. But I'll tell you, Isaiah Thomas, and this is coming from the barbershop here in the Bay Area, he has more heart than Harden. And we were talking about Harden being up for the MVP. Unless something's wrong with him outside of dating the Kardashians and not losing his leg power, Big C. That's funny when you say it. Took me a while to realize how does an all-pro athlete lose his legs? Okay, now I understand Big C dating Kardashians, but that's so funny. They don't want to know what's wrong with him. It's like, look at who he dates. Anyway, I think that's funny. They are a beautiful family, by the way. But just a thought again, going into the old days of basketball and how it even feels good to have basketball in the NBA being relevant in Boston. The only thing that could help even more so would be the New York Knicks becoming relevant. There's something about the city of Boston, all the racism with some of their fans, because most of their fans, I'll say, are absolutely excellent. A lot of their fans in Boston, whether it's for the Bruins, whether it's for the Patriots, Boston College, whether it's for the Sox or the Celtics, they have an excellent fan base. There's always a few bad apples that spoil the whole barrel. You guys understand that with moonshine. That's why you always toss out the bad barrels, right? See? But just give me your thought on the history of what it would mean to Boston to match up against Cleveland in the Eastern Conference Championship. Big C, it's like the Detroit Bad Boys and the Chicago Bulls all over again. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, Jonathan, this is an organization that's come a long way from the doldrums since Danny Ainge has taken over. They were down. Danny Ainge came in and put together this young core. He brought in a young coach, to do things his way instead of the old guard of the NBA. We've seen so much recycling in coaching the professional sports. Is that you lose a job and a buddy will hire you down the street. That's what it's been. But he brought in Bradley Stevens. Stevens has done a marvelous job over the last 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
This organization around.
Yeah.
Isaiah Thomas is point man. Now, Isaiah Thomas picked him up. He was a cast-off in the NBA. He just needed a home where somebody believed him. And, going to Boston, he was able to settle in.
Yeah.
The pressure wasn't on him because the big name in the East was LeBron and Kyrie.
Yeah.
John Wall. All of a sudden, he snuck up on everybody with back-to-back All-Star seasons.
Yeah.
And the Celtics quietly have gone on and won the Eastern Division. And now on the cusp of being in the Eastern Division Finals against Cleveland.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to pull the trigger tonight, Jonathan, and play all out. Horford has made a difference. Horford came over from Atlanta last year.
Yeah.
And, it's odd when you're a professional athlete and you're the second most popular player in your house. Think about it. His wife is former Miss Universe.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, just a gorgeous woman.
Well,
so when they're back in their native country, no one cares who he is.
Yeah.
With his wife.
Yeah. And unlike Harden, she lets him walk during the basketball games, Big C, if you understand what I mean, baby. Big C. That's funny. You make me laugh on that, but a lot of them good boys were telling me, I know what's wrong with Harden. He can't walk. I'm like, what do you mean he can't walk? And they talked about dating the Kardashians. All the brothers that have dated those girls, it's prettier going in than it is coming out. I let you put that between the lines, Big C. They had me rolling, Big C. But also going into that game, I think you're right. Boston has to do what San Antonio did last night. They have to go in there and play like this is the final game of the year. And don't worry about going back home to Game 7 because it's easier to beat somebody when they're desperate, okay? And they're desperate right now to win at home, but beat them when they're desperate. Sometimes they tend to push a little bit harder. I want to ask you a few more thoughts, too, Big C, around the world in the NBA. I know that so many people are talking about what happened last night in Houston, and they're just saying Harden didn't show up and et cetera. But I want to ask your thoughts on Popovich. I believe he's an ex-military guy, and those guys are a different breed of cat. He has his players believing next man up, not that guy. Okay, remember John McCain when he was going against Obama, he said that guy instead of President of Obama. Okay, he doesn't care who you are. That guy is anybody that wears their jersey. So they didn't have Parker. They didn't have Kawhi Leonard. These guys are all-star players, and they win by plus 30 points, Big C. What is it about the mindset of a guy like Popovich, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Jonathan, when you think about Popovich, there's one comparison to him in the NBA.
Yeah.
And that's LeBron James. When you look at it from a player perspective, everyone talks about LeBron just being the best player in the NBA. regardless of who wins the MVP or whatever, when it comes to somebody who's had 7 consecutive runs in the finals, that's the best player in the NBA when you look at it. But when you look at Popovich, 5 titles as a coach, continuously 20 consecutive years in the playoffs, Charles. Unparalleled in the NBA, in professional sports, 20 consecutive years playing at that level. And think about it, he's had multiple players that he's had to move in and out, restructure his team. So when you got a coach that can get to this level every year, Charlton, there's something to be said about it. San Antonio is a great organization, but it's led by Pop. Pop brings something that other coaches don't have.
Yeah.
He has that trust in his players. When you look at the players, in the NFL, at the Combine, they have this Wonderlic test.
Yeah.
Okay? And I don't think the Patriots give a damn about the test because Bill Belichick really doesn't pass players.
Right.
Free agents.
Yeah.
The same as with Pop. You have to pass the Pop test. Not some Wonderlic test just like the Belichick test.
Yeah.
Go in and talk to him. He wants to know where you are. Okay?
Yeah.
Talk to him. He wants to know the man. He knows that you can play because you're in the league, okay?
Yeah.
But he wants to know what can he help you do to achieve the level that you strived to be at when you came into the league. That's what Pop does. He goes in and works out the idiosyncrasies of a player to get him to that level of confidence that he can come into that organization. He doesn't have to be the star player. He can take a lesser role, but he's happy. And you think about the ego of professional athletes.
Oh, yeah.
They're not always happy taking a lesser role. We saw that with Durant
and Westbrook,
Westbrook, okay?
Yeah.
Neither one was happy taking a lesser role. But we've never seen that in San Antonio in the 20-plus years that Pop has been there. We've never seen anybody complaining from the Apple on down to Duncan.
Yeah.
You got Leonard Parker, Ginobili, and Robert Ory when he was knocking down the threes, winning championships when he was there.
Yeah.
Bruce Bowen, these are the player of the year in the NBA. A multitude of players that Pop has had in there, they like Pop. They bought into Pop's scenario.
Yeah.
That's why Pop is so valuable, and that's why San Antonio went to Houston last night and kicked the crap out of the Rockets.
And then they did a lot more than kicking the crap out of them. A lot of them guys had a lot more things they were getting kicked out of. I just want to bring this up, too, because we talk about Pop, and I want to give a little bit of praise to the good old boys on the East Coast, too. I look at the Washington Wizards head coach, Scott Brooks. He's transformed his players. I mean, he's led this team to the playoffs. This was a team in an organization, Big C. You never really thought about them being a playoff team a couple of seasons ago. And I know a lot of people want to credit, the players and all that jazz. But just your thoughts on Scott Brooks taking this job and actually turning the Washington team around, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Scott Brooks had established himself as one of the better coaches in the NBA, Charlton. Look at what he had done in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Oklahoma City has not been the same team since Brooks has left.
No.
Even though he had Durant there under his tutelage, but he built that organization. You think about it, you're playing out in a wasteland.
Yeah.
The only thing you go to Oklahoma City for is to get a cheap tank of gas. All
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Is that what happened to all my you good old boys? Nothing against Oklahoma City, but sometimes buy the gas caps at Lock, okay, just to make sure. I think I understand what you say. Buy the gas caps at Lock. You'll read between the lines someday if you ever go there. Go ahead, Big Z.
But you think about Brooks. He was let go unceremoniously.
Yeah.
You happen to be in a division with Golden State and San Antonio.
Yeah.
You're always finishing second or third in the division, okay?
Yeah.
And so, the thing about professional sports is that nobody's satisfied when you're not winning.
Yeah.
Ironically, Charlton, there's 29 teams every year that don't win the championship.
Yeah.
And half of the teams in the league don't even make the playoffs.
Yeah.
But you hire coaches that give you success. They bring in Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan has not made the team any better since he left Florida and came to Oklahoma City. But you look at what Brooks has done. He went to Washington, a team that was not a playoff team.
Yeah.
They was a perennial loser. Now they're challenging for the Eastern semifinals, Charlton.
Yeah.
This is what he has been as a coach. It's sort of like that Pop effect.
Yeah.
People don't always understand how important it is to have the right coach in the perfect scenario.
Yeah.
We've seen that with Stevens in Boston, how he's turned around that young organization, and we've also seen it with Brooks in Washington. How he's turned around that young organization. So you look at it. You have two coaches that have been there 2 and 3 organizations, and now they're challenging to go to the Eastern Finals, Charlton.
Yeah, and Big C, when you bring that up, I do want to say that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And if you're in the insurance in the sports business, it all goes together. We go through Ben and Mark, which is through Big C Sports for athletic and event insurance. We're in all 50 states, and we can even insure teams in different countries. So whether you're a professional athlete, a collegiate athlete, or your high school athletes and mom and pop soccer leagues, tweet out to Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network, and we can get you covered. Big C, you brought up some great stats about the coach over in Boston and the good old boys that we have right now, Brooks, getting Washington back into the playoffs. Mike Brown is really, he's the guy that also has NBA championship experience. I hear some of the good old boys out here in the Bay Area, outside of the ones in the barbershop, and they're trying to bring up this point, well, can the Warriors win a championship with Mike Brown as head coach as opposed to Steve Kerr? They also talked about Mark Jackson, how Mark Jackson built a team that was a playoff team and won over 50 games. Even though Kerr came in, they replaced Mark, they replaced him because they wanted, the ownership liked Steve Kerr more, nothing wrong with that. But I just want to ask you, why is he not given the credit for being a coach that was actually in the playoffs, Big C? He took the Cleveland Cavaliers to the NBA Finals, but people are saying that he might be a weakness on the Golden State Warriors, Big C. Your thoughts?
It's that same throwback that Colin Kaepernick got in the Bay Area, Charlton.
Yeah.
You can get to the finals, but you're not good enough.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And we talk about this, and people will always say that we throw this racial epithet. We do.
Everything's race. Everything's race, though.
How many white coaches do not make the finals every year in the NBA? Okay, look at the legends, see what the majority of coaches are in the league. They're white.
Yeah.
Okay? Just like in the NFL. They're white. Okay?
Yeah.
Major League Baseball, the managers, they're white. How many of them do not make the championship every year?
Yeah.
But you never hear this negative drawback. Well, they just need another year. They need another player. You always hear that about the white coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
The white manager. You always hear that about them. But the black coach, you get one run. You get to the finals, the black quarterback, you get to the finals. If you don't win, your career is over, basically.
Yeah.
This is how it's looked at. It's a one-and-done scenario when you're a black coach. I still try to figure it out, but, I kind of know because it's led by the white media.
Yeah.
It's not partial towards African Americans when they're in the position that is supposed to be cerebral. Okay?
Yeah.
They have a hard time comprehending that. They really don't know how to question a black coach, a black quarterback, because however it comes out, it says what that guy is who's questioned him.
Yeah.
And it's a racial comment. It's almost like the Mason, the young kid from Kansas who was player of the year in basketball, okay?
Yeah.
And at the combine yesterday, the NBA team personnel asked this young man, how would he like to die? Okay? How would he see himself die? Now, what's relevant? I'm trying to find the relevance of him asking that question.
I can't find it either.
But it took me back, Charlton, to an NFL personnel person several years ago at the Combine when he asked Dez Bryant, the all-pro wide receiver with the Dallas Cowboys, who was coming out of Oklahoma State at the time, asking was his mother a prostitute.
Wow.
When you think about it, only these negative, derogatory statements are made towards African-American players. It's just like with Jones almost 2 weeks ago in Fenway Park when they were making the racial epithets towards the Baltimore Orioles outfielder.
Yeah.
And then 2 nights ago against the player from Washington when the Boston fans and T.D. Garden were making the F.U. comments throughout the game.
Yeah.
So why are these things done? So when I look at these things and you wonder why the media does not give the African-American coach or quarterback or lead player in an organization the opportunity to fail and come back, I don't understand that.
Yeah, and that's a shame. And again, I tell everybody, if you want to get some real literature, there are a lot of brothers that go to barbershops, especially in the Bay Area, and you hear so many giving just real talk, Big C. They sound like it was us. And at the same time, some people, and I've even heard people say, well, should Doc Rivers be out in Los Angeles with the Clippers because they can't get past the first or second round? Here's a coach that has an NBA championship, and they're talking about him being out, but Walton getting the head job with the Lakers, because it doesn't make any sense to me. And speaking of when you look at the Lakers and the NBA, we talk about Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and what they did for the NBA back in the 80s, back in the day, Big C. Would Paul George be a fit for Los Angeles that could help turn that program around? Even though I would love to see Russell Westbrook end up wearing the Lakers purple and gold someday, Big C. Go ahead.
Well, Charles, that's a foregone conclusion. I guarantee you, within a month of the NBA draft, Paul George will be buying a house in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
That's the move that's going to take place. And by Paul George going to the Lakers, because Magic will give up the house to get Paul George, because you need a cornerstone.
Yeah.
Byron Scott would be happy to have him as a player there, as well as Walton.
Yeah.
This is where he needs to be, okay? And the NBA needs Paul George in Los Angeles. He's in an outpost in Indiana.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about Reggie Miller, marvelous career there with the Pacers.
Yeah.
But if he would have been in Los Angeles,
Oh, could you imagine?
he would have been one of the top 2 players in the NBA.
Yeah.
But he was toiling in Indiana.
Could-
Paul George it's a foregone conclusion that he will be a Laker next season, Charles.
Yeah.
The Lakers will give up 2 or 3 young players because Paul George brings instant success. Not only that, Charles, is that he brings other players who will want to play with the
Yeah.
Lakers now.
Yeah.
Because they'll have that cornerstone of the franchise that's unselfish.
Yeah.
So it will be very easy for the Lakers to get another 1 or 2 free agents that will make them an immediate, impactful team in the West. Now, they're the toughest division in
Yeah.
the NBA,
Yeah.
but they will no longer be toiling down there under 30, 50 shots. They will move up to 50 wins real quickly.
Big C, that's a very good point that you bring up with Paul George and players wanted to come here. As much as I loved Kobe Bryant as a player, as a teammate, he was very selfish, and he even cost the organization by not taking less money like that good old boy Duncan did down there in San Antonio, letting them keep a strong franchise. He wanted it to be about Kobe, and he got what he wanted, even though it cost the Lakers. The shine came off of the greatness that they have down there. And again, just going down to the fight over the weekend in Las Vegas, coming back to L.A., everybody talks about the Lakers, but it's a shame that them good old boys in Los Angeles were willing to let one person ruin the whole ship. And that's the unfortunate part. But I think you're right. If Paul George comes, he doesn't have that ego that Kobe had and would have more people coming. And I think Magic Johnson, because he has so many championships, not only in college, but in the NBA, I heard some knuckleheads saying, yeah, but he hasn't succeeded at everything. Okay, who has succeeded at everything? But the guy owns Starbucks franchises in the business world. He's also created a lot of entrepreneurs in the African-American community. He's been on television. He's done everything. And he's helped, I think he has 5 championships, Big C, and even 6 if you count the one in college. Winners know other winners. They know what other winners act like. They know what other winners think like. And I think that he could put something together that would get the Lakers back at least into the playoffs coming up in the next season or two, Big C. Your thoughts?
The thing about Magic, what he brings, just like Bird in Indiana. When Bird was in Indiana, this was a franchise that was toiling in nowhere.
Yep.
But he had that winning mentality, just as we've seen in Boston with Danny Ainge.
Yeah.
They're not going to settle for mediocrity, okay?
No.
That's the difference in having a former champ running your organization, is that they understand what competitive juices are.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
And then looking for that guy who has that energy level that will get a team to that point.
Yeah.
Anybody can go out and collect a paycheck. I had teammates over the years when I played that were collecting a paycheck. And the only reason you knew who they were because they were coming up to window with their jersey on with their master. Get that paycheck.
That's funny.
Players like that today.
Yeah.
But, I had a coach one time. He walked in, and we had a quarterback that had gotten beat up in the game, and the offensive line had gave up several sacks. And all he did was walk into the team meeting. He said, and he used some expletives just like the big football
Yeah.
during the game the other night.
Yeah.
And he said, look, there's some offensive linemen in here that I'm going to change some zip codes with. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you, Big C.
Play like that again. And a couple of them going to change his zip codes.
Some of them.
That next game, they didn't give up a sack. Without them giving up a sack. So they kind of like the place that they were living in.
Yeah.
And realized they need to step up. And that's what a Magic Johnson would do. The limelight of LA gets on a lot of young players.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Magic is willing to give up 2 or 3 of the young players to get them out of that lifestyle.
Yeah.
To let them go somewhere just like they said about Utah.
Yeah.
There's no clubs, okay?
Yeah.
And bring in Paul George, who's gone through that young stage of the NBA. He's gotten that out of his system. Now he wants to go to a place where he potentially has a chance to win a championship.
Yeah.
And he will change his mindset and even become a better player than what he is already, Charlton.
Yeah, in fact, he played his college games up the Highway 99 at Fresno State, played for the Bulldogs, and had them rolling when he played there. Obviously, I mean, nothing wrong with small markets, but there's no comparison. If you can get a job in L.A. or you can get a job in New York, you take those jobs. Those two areas, it's funny because being here in Northern California, this is SoCal, NorCal rivalry kind of thing. But when it comes to championships, the Lakers have more championships than anybody. And there's no really comparison of that. We have the Giants and the Dodgers. We have used to be the Raiders and the Rams. Now it's going to be the 49ers and the Rams again. But just that mentality, people know you love LA or you hate LA. And oftentimes when the Lakers would play the Celtics, you hear the crowd chanting, beat LA, because LA is synonymous with champions. It just has to have the right guy that says, look, I'm successful. I know a little bit about how to make money and how to be successful. Magic Johnson is that guy, irrespective of what some of the media cronies talk about. I think he can turn it around the same way Larry Bird took Indiana that you just talked about, Big C. But Magic Johnson, unfortunately, he's not going to get the same benefit of the doubt in the time frame because he's still an African-American man, Big C. Your thoughts?
And that's the biggest backlash against Magic Johnson, Charlton, is that you got a lot of mainstream media that does not want to see him succeed at this level. Because it'll come back like, damn, is there anything he cannot succeed at? I mean,
Yeah.
That's what it'll come down to.
Yeah.
Like he won in college, okay?
Yeah.
He beat the favorites in college at Michigan
Yeah.
State when they beat Indiana State
Yeah.
in 79.
Yeah.
All of a sudden he comes into the NBA as a rookie with the title, beating the Sixers.
Yeah.
Without Kareem in the lineup and the Sixers were favored. All of a sudden, he's beaten Bird a couple times in
Yeah.
the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
So is there anything he cannot do? He did not succeed as a head coach. Let's put that on his resume.
Yeah.
He did not succeed as a head coach with the Lakers. But now is his chance to be what he really is. He's an executive, okay?
Yeah.
Magic understands things from the business vernacular. That's where he's going to have his strong suit put forth, where he's not going to have to go out there as a coach and compare somebody to what he did.
Yeah.
Players don't see the court like Magic did, okay?
Yeah.
Just like Kobe. Kobe would be a tremendous executive, but he would be a terrible coach.
Yeah.
Because he was too damn competitive.
Yeah.
And so, he wants players to see things the way he saw them as a player. You can't do that. It doesn't always translate. That's why players who came off the bench end up making better coaches, Charlton, because they saw the game differently.
Yeah.
They didn't see the game from a control perspective. They saw the game from an understanding perspective. And that's why Brooks has been such a tremendous coach.
Yeah.
That's why Kerr's been such a tremendous coach. And a few others, Charlton, is that they saw the game from the sidelines. They were able to go out, and as coaches, they were just like they were as players. But Magic will get the job done in Los Angeles. And the cornerstone, the first player he needs to get is Paul George.
Yeah.
Just like with Magic with the Lakers. You went out and you got that key players that kept that organization strong.
Well, Big C, that's a very good point because teams can win now. If you can win in Memphis and have a playoff team, you can have a playoff team in L.A. If you can win in Utah, Salt Lake City, and have a playoff team in the NBA, an up-and-coming team, you can win in L.A. If you can win anywhere, basketball in LA is synonymous with the greatness. People play so much basketball in Los Angeles year-round, and it's always this talk about who the great players are. Big, so you've seen most of them. Just want to get your thoughts again. In the comparisons, they're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers turning the corner. Okay, they keep comparing this guy named LeBron James with Air Jordan. Now, both of them shot 50% in the regular season, their careers on average. Three-point range, James is a better three-point shooter than Jordan was back in the day. He's shooting about 34%. Jordan shot 33%. Field goal percentage, free throw percentage, Jordan was 84, James 74. But I just want to ask you, if you were picking a team, we talked about the great Oscar Robertson, and Westbrook caught him this year. We talked about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Russell, how great they were. Wilt Chamberlain, how fabulous he was as an athlete and a player. How would you rank Jordan and LeBron James, Big C, just for comparison's sake? Go right ahead, sir.
They're two completely different players, Tom, two different games.
You think so?
Jordan had a faster game than what LeBron had.
Yeah.
But LeBron is more dominant dominant physically, Charlton. He can do more things than what Jordan did.
Yeah.
Okay, Jordan would have a hard time playing in the post. LeBron just as comfortable playing in the post as he is on the point.
Yeah.
So, he's more multi-dimensional than what Jordan was. Jordan, his game was solid in every way.
Yeah.
But he also, as they talk about an era thing, is that players get better over time.
Yeah.
Okay? In every era, player gets better over time. These players could play in any era.
Oh, yeah.
I like James because of what James has done. He's been a physically dominant player. Jordan was just spectacular. Okay?
Yeah, yeah.
But James has been a physically dominant player. He can, will his team.
Yeah.
That's the difference that I've seen with James over Jordan. I mean, Jordan will never have his detractors, okay?
No.
There will always people that will say Jordan is the best that ever lived. For my money, Kareem is the best that ever lived.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you'd have put the ball in Kareem's hand, as much as Jordan and as much as James, there would never even be any question. He'd have scored 40,000 points in his career,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
He'd have pushed the envelope out so far that nobody could even open the mail.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah, that's funny.
That's how it is. And I mean, everybody's going to have their favorite
Yeah.
about. But if you compare, I don't know, can you compare apple to oranges? They're both fruits.
Yeah, I just put them in a blender, Big C. They taste the same to me.
And you can make alcohol out of both of them. But,
Wait. Hold on. Breaking news. You can make alcohol out of what, Big C?
Out of fruit, out of apples and oranges, Charles.
Okay, is that part of the moonshine recipe, Big C, or no?
No, that's called.
Okay. I told you all the moonshine that we talk about, you good boys, sipping on down south. A lot of the networks they're talking about, I think it's Jack Daniels, which is like an offshoot of moonshine, just not as good, Big C. But they're all pumping the real man, as you say, grown man food. This is grown man liquor. I think sometimes when you talk about those two players, LeBron James and Michael Jordan, arguably maybe the two best, but I want to give you two more as we get into this playoffs. People are talking about it. How would you compare when it comes to the best? If they had a one-on-one game, back in the day, guys would play one-on-one to 11. If you put Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the court playing a one-on-one against Bill Russell. Now, we know Russell has more championships than Kareem does with the Celtics. Who would win that game, Big C? The best of five, would it be the good old boy and Kareem? Or would it be the good old boy with 11 championships, even someone on his toes, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Kareem's going to win that, Charlton. He had a better offensive game.
Yeah.
Russell was a premier dominant defensive player probably in NBA history. As far as what he brought to the table, he could score also, won more championships than any basketball player in history, Charlton. You think about it. University of San Francisco wins back-to-back NCAA titles, okay?
Yeah.
Then he goes and wins an Olympic gold medal. The man hadn't slowed down yet, all right?
Yeah.
He gave him 3 titles before he got to the NBA.
Yeah.
Lucked up and won 11 more in the NBA. Think about it. This man won 14 championships, Charlton.
Wow.
14 championships, 2 NCAA titles, an Olympic gold medal, and 11 NBA titles. So it's based on championships, okay?
Yeah.
Purely championships. Bill Russell's the greatest basketball player to ever live. But they're not going to base it just on championships.
Yeah.
Because what somebody means to an organization, it's like we were talking about Popovich earlier. Okay?
Yeah.
There's nobody around that knew Bill Russell that's watching ESPN. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And that's how, if Bill Russell had been around when ESPN was, if ESPN had been around when Bill Russell was playing, Bill Russell would have been on ESPN for 15 years every night.
Yeah,
okay? Even in the offseason, they'd have followed Bill Russell. That's how great a player Bill Russell was, Charlie. There's no parallel to what Bill Russell did. Now, we got highlight players in Michael Jordan and others.
Yeah.
But Bill Russell set a benchmark that the guys are so complacent and ignorant that do sports now can't understand.
Yeah.
They can't. And he wasn't a highlight player. He was just a great player.
Yeah.
What he did is like what LeBron does now. He did it so often is that you just thought it was secondhand.
Yeah.
You didn't look at anything he did as spectacular. When he won a championship, it wasn't spectacular. It was expected. It's just like when LeBron goes up and blocks somebody's shot, a dunk, or throws past somebody, it's expected.
Yeah.
And that's what Bill Russell created in basketball. But Kareem was beating one on one. Now, ironically, they played when Kareem was a youth.
Yeah.
They played each other. You know, it's a pickup game.
Yeah.
Bill Russell taught Kareem a lot.
Really?
Bill taught Kareem a lot in his youth.
Okay.
But, you know, you look at it, if they would go out there as grown men on an even plane, Kareem had that shot that you could not stop, the sky hook. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
He scored on Wilt, and Wilt was the greatest shot blocker in the game at the time. He scored on Wilt effortlessly. So don't think that Kareem had a parallel at his time of his height in the NBA, because he could have averaged 45 points a game. He was just not selfish, Joe.
Let me ask you this question, because we're talking about the championship setup. You know, we got the Golden State Warriors, we got the Cleveland Cavaliers. Everybody's looking at that. If there's a team that can get in and knock off Cleveland, it would have to be Washington. Even though I think Boston's going to win this series, I think Washington is more physical. They can match up physically with Cleveland, even though I don't think they could beat them in a 7-game series. But the thing with Golden State in San Antonio, it's not a foregone conclusion that Golden State's going to win this thing, just because you talked about the mindset of Pop and them winning without them good old boys that they didn't have in the game last night in Leonard and also Parker. I can't just see that Pop doesn't find a way to strategize. If you know, we're out in Los Angeles, they talk about great movie stars. I think Sam Jackson is the highest paid movie star in Los Angeles, an African-American man. If he's not number one, he's number two. You look at Denzel Washington, how good he is as an actor. You know, Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, when them good boys, when you want a leading character for an actor in Hollywood, you want a leading male character. I think one of the most striking characters, Robert De Niro, all them good old boys. But Sam Jackson, his range is so deep. I really loved him in Pulp Fiction, but I love Denzel Washington and Malcolm X, even though Malcolm X was too strong for the mainstream media to give him an Oscar for that. And Tom Hanks, he's always, I love him as Forrest Gump, okay? Tom Cruise, he had his signature series that he had the 007 series, Big C. Mission Impossible series.
Mission Impossible.
Yeah, so when you're looking at an actor in Hollywood, you know, Magic knows this too. You start bringing the good old boys in the NBA that want to go to LA and be a star. You're looking at Jack sitting across the floor. You're looking at Denzel. You're looking at Sam Jackson, Tom Cruise. All these great people show up. Now, the reason I say that is because LA has a second act. That's called acting. Okay? A lot of these players want to get into acting. They want to get into broadcast. You have so many more opportunities, Big C, in LA that can be a good thing or a bad thing. Is that also an appeal for athletes coming out there, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, that opportunity, Jonathan, to expand your life in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
The people that you're going to deal with, the social atmosphere. It either makes you or breaks you in Los Angeles. We've seen so many players fall through the cracks in all sports, baseball, football, basketball.
Yeah.
But LA is a city of angel cities of stars. Okay?
Yeah.
And so the stars come out to see the stars. And when you're there, you want to elevate. It's like a movie role, Charlton,
Yeah.
every night. Is that you want to elevate to be the leader, the lead actor in a movie. You want to be the lead role.
Yeah.
And that's what LA brings out in athletes. When you look at the plethora of championships that LA has presented, Charlton, to its fans.
Yeah.
And you look at the different lead characters every time they have a championship. I mean, even with the Lakers. Look how many different MVPs the Lakers had their championship on.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've had enough to start a team.
Yeah. That's
right?
true. That's true.
So, when you look at that, it's the next man up in LA.
Yeah.
And no one wants to be the guy that, runs the organization down like they have all these young players now. And that's why with Magic coming in, you're going to see a lot of these young players move along, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Because we need some veterans. Magic worked with an organization when he was players. Magic was the young guy on the team.
Yeah.
When he came in, he was a 20-year-old rookie out of Michigan State, okay?
Yeah.
19, 20-year-old rookie.
Yeah.
But he had the tutelage, Jonathan, of some veteran players that showed him how to behave in the NBA.
Yep.
Showed him how to be in that lifestyle. That's what he's looking to bring in, a couple of veteran players, Jonathan. That not have so many young players on the team, because you're not going to build a championship team, Jonathan, with 8 players on your roster under 5 years experience in the NBA.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
And that's a
You're
great.
going to have to move half of those players out.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And he has the mentality to do it. You know, when you look at the NBA playoffs this year, the home teams, when facing elimination, they are 0-10. They've lost every single one, Big C, out of 10. And the Wizards want to make sure it's not 0-11, but we'll see what happens tonight as that game starts, Big C. But I just want to get your thoughts, too. Golden State, as we get ready to close out today's program, they have the opportunity to rest. They're fresher than anybody going into a game. Some of you guys, like you play football, so you guys like to argue and fight and all that stuff, and you have to get into, sometimes drink a little moonshine before a game. But they don't have that attitude that they need going into a game being fresh. Have they had too many days off going into a hot team on Sunday like San Antonio, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charles, I don't think you can have too many days rest. When you're a veteran, you understand what you need.
Yeah.
You understand how to control your body. And that's the difference. You think about, there's no crying right now that Cleveland's getting days off, that Golden State's getting days off.
Yeah.
If this was during the regular season and you didn't see LeBron on the court for 3 or 4 days, that's all the media would be talking about. They're sitting LeBron. He doesn't deserve a rest.
Yeah.
He should be out there running his butt off every day and every night.
Right.
But, these veteran players need that rest, Charlton.
Yeah.
To get their legs back under. There's a lot of trauma on the legs throughout the season and the back in the NBA with that constant pounding. So when you think about how much better these teams are going to be, these teams have been there, Charlton. It's nothing new for them. They're not going to be excited. They're going to go out and play basketball.
Yeah.
The plus side that the Warriors have is that they have a rotation of 9 players.
Yeah.
That they can go out and challenge you with, and that 9 players will run. They remind me of the late Jerry Tarkanian.
Oh, yeah.
When they started shooting coming out of the locker room when he had to run the Rebels down in Las Vegas.
Well, hold on. You just brought up a thought. Jerry Tarkanian, now he's a good old boy, but he always had that towel in his mouth sipping on it. Now, some good old boys at the barbershop, they said he had moonshine on that towel, Big C. Any thoughts on what Jerry Tarkanian was always sucking on during the basketball game, Big C? Your thoughts? He was always relaxed. That's funny. Yeah. But they never let the players suck off of that same towel because you can't drink unless you're like 21 or something like that, unless you're from the South or something like that. Big C. I just thought that was funny that the good old boys brought that up to me. And so as we get ready to close out, we have a lot of good things here in the Bay Area tonight, waiting for the Reds to start up again against the San Francisco Giants. They got a 3-2 win last night, and the ballpark is a great ballpark, great place to come see Major League Baseball here in San Francisco. And right across the bay, you have Golden State getting ready for Sunday against some good old boys from Texas, San Antonio style. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people paying attention to the matchups and the coaching between Brown and Pop, Big C. But I want to ask you what you're looking forward to going forward into this week, Big C. Go right ahead, sir.
Well, we're talking about I'm looking for Sunday, okay?
Yeah.
We're going to have a great series starting on Sunday with Golden State and the Warriors.
Yeah.
The first time that these two have played in the Western Conference Final.
Yeah.
It's going to be strategic. You got Kawhi Leonard who's sit out now 3 days, so his ankle should be fine, according to pro standards.
Yeah.
It'll be 100%.
Yeah.
That's what they have to do to it.
Yeah.
But, Golden State has been rested as a team. Kawhi gets 3 days, Golden State's had a week.
Yeah.
So, I look at Golden State to come out with Mike Brown on the bench, running this organization, Charlton, full tilt. Not slowing down for anything.
Yeah.
I look at them to come out and start bombing threes to set the tempo. Now, if they come out and they can drop 3 or 4, 5 3-pointers in the first quarter, Charlton, it's over with. San Antonio will not be able to keep pace. But San Antonio has to tighten up their defense, push out the perimeter against Golden State if they want to stay in this game.
Well, Big C, you know how we talk about the most valuable player in the universe, and I want to get your thoughts, on coming up on who you think has to be the most valuable player in the universe if you're looking at Boston in their game tonight against Washington, and then also as we jump into next week on the weekend with Golden State and San Antonio, who has to be the number one player in the universe for those nights, Big C? Before I get that answer, I also want to tell people who love bicycling and cycle racing. They have the Amgen Tour started here in Northern California in Lake Tahoe. That's going to be going throughout the coast of California over the weekend. You good boys that like to watch people ride bicycles, come on up to California. There's a lot of good action going on around the Golden State Big C. Again, who's your most valuable player in the universe coming up for Boston and Washington, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is John Wall's time to shine. If Washington is going to win, John Wall is going to have to score at least 30 points tonight.
Yeah.
He is going to have to be unselfish with the basketball. He is going to have to go out there and get to the rim. It's going to be imperative that he can get Boston in foul trouble, Charlton. He can't just sit there and look to get the assist. I mean, it's always nice to have a player who will facilitate.
Yeah.
But John Wall has to show that he is the second best player in the Eastern Conference tonight if Washington is to stay in this series and force a game 7. If he pulls a James Harden in any kind of way, when he shies away from scoring, Johnson, Boston will be playing Cleveland this weekend.
Yeah, and so hopefully there's no Kardashians hanging around from what I understand, so that should not affect them. Again, your thoughts, I know we'll talk about it on Monday's show, Big C. Who has to be the most valuable player in the universe when San Antonio comes to the Golden State to take on the Warriors, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, a lot of it's going to depend on what they get out of the point guard, Johnson. Paul Gasol, I think they can take him out of the game so that they make the big man ineffective.
Yeah.
And San Antonio's going to have to play small ball. Patty Mills is going to have to really be aggressive in this game. He's the third point guard that San Antonio has started this year. Kawhi Leonard, there's a lot on his shoulders offensively and defensively.
Yeah.
But I think, Golden State has enough personnel to match up with him. But the thing about Leonard in this game, Charlton, is that he has to play defense against somebody great.
Yeah.
Every play.
Yeah.
Okay, whether he's on Kevin Durant, whether he's on Draymond Green, whether he's on Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
He has to work hard defensively, so that's going to take a lot away from his offensive game. So that's the key for San Antonio is how hard they make Kawhi Leonard work, Charlton.
Yeah, and so Big C, as we ask you that too, because Las Vegas, there's a lot of buzz going around Las Vegas, just like the fight that was over the weekend. Las Vegas doesn't make money when the favorite wins, correct? We all saw that last year in the NBA Finals because people are, we're kind of suckers. We're gullible. We always go for the team that's favored by the largest point total. We always look at the team that has all the superstars as the team that's going to win. But Las Vegas doesn't make any money. They can't build those fancy hotels, especially with the Raiders coming. They need more hotel money, Big C. Las Vegas, I just want to get your point of view because you don't get it anywhere else. We talked about Jimmy the Greek Snyder back in the day when he was with Irv Cross and Mushburger, them good old boys at CBS Sports. What is Las Vegas feeling about this series, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Las Vegas wants to have Golden State, Charlton, win this series.
Yeah.
They do. Because the real money comes with Cleveland and Golden State playing each other.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be bets on the NBA. But the real money, just like an Alvarez fight last week.
Yeah.
The real money comes there.
Yeah.
And so with Golden State, here it is. You got a trifecta going for a championship. You haven't seen that in many years, Charlton.
Yeah.
It's just the Lakers and the Celtics.
Yeah.
To see teams play that competitively, consistently 3 years in a row. But to get that opportunity, you got to have both of those teams win. So all of Vegas money is on Golden State. You'll get some money laid on San Antonio, but the money's on Golden State to be there.
You know how I heard say this earlier when even when basketball was in preseason, you predicted we'd see a trilogy. And now I'm good at dominoes, and I notice how dominoes can fall sometime, Big C. And as I look at the dominoes of the NBA playoffs, I wrote down that Big C was saying that we're going to have a Golden State and the Cleveland Cavaliers finals again. And I said, well, 3 years in a row that rarely happens, Big C. But as I see these dominoes falling, I don't know what's in that moonshine that you've been drinking, but I'm going to ask you to send some out to California, Big C. As we close out, tell me what you're looking forward to this weekend one last time, Big C.
Well, Charlton, like I said, I'm looking at Golden State to get off to a fast start. Also looking for the Stanley Cup semifinals to get going, in the NHL. You got the Nashville Predators playing the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, and we know the Ducks, are not good on frozen ponds, they like to
yeah.
Look at the Predators. Predators normally eat ducks.
Yeah. Or they work for Fox News, but they got rid of that good old boy O'Reilly, Big C.
So, I'm really excited about Western semifinals for the first time in their history.
Yeah.
That's great, in professional sports when you get new organizations in.
Yeah.
And you got the Ottawa Senators, Charlton, representing Canada.
Oh, yeah.
That's big. They're playing the Penguins. The Penguins trying to get back to the Stanley Cup. You got a healthy Sidney Crosby, in Pittsburgh coming off that concussion that he had suffered, but they knocked out Washington regardless.
Yeah.
And so I'm expecting two great NHL opening round games, Charlton, this weekend in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals, Charlton.
Well, Big C, I love the way you close it out, and I do got to give you a lot of credit on saying how this series would shape up, because anybody can say something the week before it happens, but the way that you predicted this way back in October, Big C, I just want to give you credit for that. I also want to say every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide, follow Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network, the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and the good old boys down south. We always want to tell you, there's never any reason for domestic violence. If you know any woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no woman should have to go through that garbage all on her own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports program, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.